Welcome to the DesignRush podcast. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Today we're talking with Alex Myers, the man who built Manifest into one of the most awarded agencies in the world. But Alex isn't here to talk about shiny trophies. Nope, he's here to talk about why screwing up is essential and why fear is your new best friend.
We think of this idea of CEOs being the people who don't make mistakes. If you ask me, the CEO is the person that should make the most mistakes and the person who should care the least about that.
And he's right. Data shows that 77% of top CEOs think creativity is the lifeblood of success. And guess what? That comes from failing. A lot. It's those who push past fear and failure who are driving innovation.
Some of my proudest achievements haven't been anything to do with kind of scale of the business, but very much it has been that progressive mindset.
Alex didn't just chase bigger paychecks, he chased bigger impact. B Corp status, equal parent leave, that's where the real growth happens. Through purpose, not just profit. Studies show that companies focus on progressive values and incremental change outperform their competitors.
But it's also that hungry startup mindset of what can we do now? You know, what does progress look like? So incremental change all the time, basically. If you're not obsessed by that, then yeah, you're just going to stagnate, really. We have a line in our creative manifesto at Manifest, which says a good idea sends a shiver down your spine, but a great idea scares the shit out of you. Get used to it. And I think that fear, lean into it. Don't shy away from it.
Because here's the thing, if it doesn't scare you, it's probably not bold enough. And in 2024, the innovators embracing that fear are the ones winning. Stick around, this conversation will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about leadership, failure, and creativity. Also, if you've got a story to share, send it over to spotlights@designrush.com and let's make headlines together. Remember to like and sub for more conversations with industry leaders. Let's get into it. Alex, a very warm welcome to the DesignRush podcast. It is wonderful having you here with us today.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
Of course. Okay, so Alex, first of all, congrats on being shortlisted for the CEO of the Year at the Drum Awards, right? So I wonder, Alex, when you started Manifest from your living room, no less, did you ever think that it would grow to be into one of the most awarded agencies out there at the moment?
No, certainly that wasn't one of the principal objectives. I think, my sights were set firmly on what do I do each day, basically, when I started the business. I think it was like any business really started with a mixture of naivety and bravado. So I was kind of like, well, let's just see what happens. It was very much just riding it out at that point in time, I think. So yeah, it's great to be where we are now, but also as a founder, I'm always looking at where we could be or could have been, and how we can improve things.
You know, I had a guest on the podcast not too long ago that said to me, the best thing that a founder or slash CEO can do is to keep that startup mindset with their agency, is to like keep that hustle going, because as soon as you stop doing that and you get all the awards and all of that, you kind of start stagnating and you can always grow bigger, right?
Definitely, and it's not just about bigger from a commercial ambition standpoint. It's also just bigger in terms of influence and impact. If I look back over the last 15 years we've been running Manifest, some of my proudest achievements haven't been anything to do with kind of scale of the business, but very much it has been that progressive mindset. I think we're the first agency to introduce equal parental leave, the first global creative network to achieve B Corp status, the first agency to achieve full blueprint status for commitment to DE&I. So those kind of things are as exciting and as big a milestone, I think. But it's also that hungry startup mindset of what can we do now? What does progress look like? So incremental change all the time, basically. If you're not obsessed by that, then yeah, you're just going to stagnate, really. And it's not just about commercial scale, it's about creative ambition as well.
100%. I wonder, actually, now that we're on this topic, what are some of the things that you do as an agency founder slash CEO to keep yourself agile?
Ooh, agile. I'm not sure anyone would call me agile. I'm 43. But I think the key thing at a CEO level, I think, is to continue learning. Everyone talks about a kind of curiosity and a learning mindset. But I do think that it's quite easy to find yourself in your own echo chamber, especially when the business gets to a certain scale. So I think honestly, embracing the imposter syndrome, I wake up every morning thinking I'm going to get found out, right? We're all like two phone calls from the street. There's no room for ego, as a founder, certainly. So I think using that as fuel to continue learning, to continue thinking what if, is really important. Um, but so is kind of giving yourself a break. I think one of the things founders have is a really healthy freedom to fail. So I think, we're very used to testing and learning, right? So there's only kind of ideas that work and ideas you learn from. There's no such thing as kind of a mistake or failure because everything is about progress. And I think that mindset is, if you can do anything within a team culture, is to try and imbue that across the team. Because you don't learn without failing. Anyone who's seen a child try to learn to walk knows that. And I think sometimes we think of this idea of CEOs being the people who don't make mistakes. If you ask me, the CEO is the person that should make the most mistakes, and the person who should care the least about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one more thing that we're talking about this now as well. I wonder, you say like kind of encouraging your team to keep learning and stuff. Does that really start in the hiring process for you? With the type of people that you hire, or are there things that you do within your agency that really encourage your team members to, you know, learn more, always be on the cutting edge of like whatever innovation is happening right now with tech, AI, I mean, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, aside from it being kind of baked into our appraisal systems and the usual career development side, something that we try and do is, is help learn through landscape. So we developed a ventures division. It's probably 5 years ago now, where we have an equity share in a number of different joint ventures, um, and that allows our team to be the client. But immediately, what I noticed was it expands our horizons, right? So the team suddenly are asking themselves questions about their work, like, would I spend my money on this? Because technically, that's exactly what we're doing. But also, I've got to learn about this industry that my business is in. And then you ask yourself, okay, why don't I learn about the industries that I'm operating in for clients as much? And it begins to establish the value of learning much faster. And I think realistically, everyone's got that same ambition to learn necessarily. But I think what we sometimes forget is the value we get back from it. And I think certainly at every level in your career, you need to kind of be able to not just learn new things, but you need to be able to apply that learning. And I think at Manifest, we're very much equipped really to be able to give people fields of learning for sure, but also fields of application, and reasons to apply that knowledge and understanding. So I think that makes a big difference. Um, but yeah, generally, we also have what you would expect. We have a diploma program, which includes badges, which are quite important, I think, to everybody. But importantly, also that learning is imbued into the career structure. So you can't be promoted into a role without having taken the relevant training, read the relevant reading list. And that obviously might seem like it's a guarantee of standards for the employer, but it's also ensuring we're not throwing anyone in at the deep end unprepared. I think, for instance, there's a lot of accidental managers and accidental leaders in the agency world, and we don't want that to happen. We also created a program called the Future Leaders Program for people who show that leadership, curiosity, and spirit, even at junior levels, but to help them kind of curate and architect what they want to be as leaders in the future. So you might only be a junior account manager now, but that doesn't mean you're not a leader in a sense of the areas of responsibility that you're in, but also that you should have a philosophy of leadership for when you do grow into those positions. I think too often in agency world, you start off being asked to do jobs, right? And then when you're really good at that, you then teach other people how to do those jobs. And then you hire people to teach people to do those jobs. And then suddenly you're asked to think, right? You suddenly ask, what should it be that we're doing? Who should be doing it? How should we be doing it? And I feel like that kind of chasm, that leap, is too much to ask of people. So I think partly that learning and training aspect is also about ourselves and looking introspectively as much as looking at the outside world too. So we try and make sure we curate all of that for everybody and give everyone the freedom to kind of develop themselves really.
That's really, really nice to hear. But also, just on the topic of leadership now, I wonder what leadership moves have really helped you scale, and what advice do you have for other agencies, or agency owners looking to really build long term success?
Oof, that's a big question. I'm not sure anything's ever done consciously as leadership moves, so to speak. I think every leader will say that the best thing they've done is hire people better than themselves. Um, Luckily, I set the bar relatively low, so it's pretty easy to do that. But I think that recruitment process you can't take that you can't take that lightly, but also you can't over exaggerate how significant that is. That manifest isn't really my achievement as to what it is, or it's not my potential. It's very much the collective ownership of the team around me. And I think as a leader, you've got to really be willing to spread that responsibility, but also spread that praise and understand that, and not feel like everything ladders up to you, just like it does kind of responsibility. That doesn't that's not the same for attributing that success. And what was the second part of the question? What agencies can do to kind of grow and scale? I would say something that agencies say they do that they don't is build an agency for the work. If there's anything in the DNA of Manifest Success, it's building an agency to produce the best possible work. That's why we focus on the people in the team, because they're the ones producing the work. That's why we're interested in DE and I. 96% of the industry, depending which survey you look at, anywhere between 90 and 96% of the industry is still white. And 60% of the content consumed by everyone is produced by creative industries. That's imbuing a lot of the world with unconscious bias that doesn't need to be there. There's possibly only the legal industries that have the same responsibility to get that right, but you only care if you're doing that for the work, right? And a diverse team is better for the work. So most agencies say it, but most agencies are really built either they're built around an exit, right? So if you're thinking for the exit from the day of the entrance, you're going to be in trouble. What you end up doing is painting yourself into a corner of a industry specialism, a geographic location, a channel specialism, a vertical market specialism, because that's buyable. That's what people are looking for. Okay, I need to expand into automotive industries as a network agency. I'll buy an automotive specialist agency, right? So that you can understand if people want an exit, that's what they do. But that automotive agency will be absorbed into that network, never having to produce a legacy of work, never having produced a body of work that has value, never having done anything different. And I think the truth of the matter is that work is not a place that we go, it's something that we collectively produce. And we've all got to remember that as a business. And if you're producing work and that's the main focus of your attention, people will pay you a lot of money for it, and people will respect you for it. But I always say, kind of two poles that we need all of our work to exist within. It's a base level work you want to tell your mates about in the pub, but at an aspirational level, work you want to tell your grandchildren you did. And I think if there's a problem actually for marketers in general, not just agency founders, but marketers, it's that when you're asked what you do, you kind of look at your shoes and shuffle and you say marketing. I've done it myself, right? And you just think, actually, the main thing that you can do to drive the value and success of an agency and the team and the work within it is to be proud of the work that you do and never let anyone tell you it's not important. I think, the behavioral economist Danny Kahneman, someone actually summed him up actually saying that behavioral economics, in behavioral economics, it kind of discovers that no one ever bought a number, they bought a story about a number. In marketing, we write the story, right? We are literally the engine of economics. And therefore, there is an opportunity that comes with that. There's also a responsibility to do the right thing. And there's a chance, really, to change the world. Brands, effectively, as far as we're concerned, Manifest is built to build brands that change the world. And it's not just a cheesy line for the website. It's literally our strategic process. Brand first, change first, understand that it's audience back. It's a human-centric approach. The world that you're affecting really contributes to the process, and that's exciting to be part of, right? That's something that people can feel, I did that. That it feels like a collective legacy. And if you're doing that, you're going to progress. You're going to have the enthusiasm to do more of it for more people, bigger and better. We expanded geographically because we wanted to have more influence. We expanded in order to be able to win bigger clients, to do more work, to have a more positive impact on a bigger audience. And I think, people talk a lot about purpose in branding and also in agencies, but it's not far enough, right? If a purpose is what you stand for, that's not enough. You have to stand up for it. And I think like progress is that, what are you doing to achieve what you said you believe in? And that's what you need to ask your clients. But as an agency too, you need to be, we can measure how many brands we've worked with, the changes that they've brought about, and the impact that's had on the world or culture in general. And that's exciting. It might also just crash and burn because it's not built off. Probably much cleverer people who run spreadsheet related businesses might have real criticism of that as being kind of naive or airy fairy. But I think realistically, if the work is great, everything goes well. When the work starts to suffer, everything else starts to suffer.
100%. I have to tell you, Alex, it is so sitting here talking with people like you is why I love my job, because these are such insightful things that a lot of people, I think, especially where you're saying if you're getting into it to see the end, to get out of it at some point, that is such a, what's the word that I'm looking for? It really hurts the agency that you're building, because at the end of the day, if you're not putting in the work, if you're not providing the best possible projects and work for your clients, at the end of it, there might not ever be an end anyways. So, I mean, as long as you're putting in the, pulling up your socks and putting in the hard work now and not thinking about that, I think that will definitely create a much better outcome, regardless of where it is that you want to go. I think it opens a lot more doors as well than what you initially thought, as well as an agency owner.
Absolutely. And I think it's mirrors, agency brands mirror what we would say to all of our brand clients. Really, there's three kinds of agency, just like there are three kinds of any brand. There are surviving businesses, there are successful businesses, and there are significant businesses. Now, surviving businesses are on a race to the bottom, offering what everyone else does at a lower and lower price, and effectively a price-based market. The product-based successful businesses are the ones who are trying to bring innovation to market as fast as they can. Maybe they've got a first mover advantage somewhere. They have a USP that allows them this opportunity to grow quickly, but it's not necessarily long-lived because it's transactional. A significant brand judges its success by the positive impact it has on its audience, on its customer. And by doing that, becomes relevant to that customer's life and relevant to more broadly to the culture that surrounds it. Now, you can tell yourself, if you are a pragmatist, that being successful is all you need. That's where the money comes from. It's the significant brands in every category that have the high share price, right? It's the difference between Dell and Apple, success and significance. It's the difference between a no-mark car brand and someone like Tesla. As much as you might agree or disagree with Elon Musk, they're change-based, right? They've established a real shift in the category of cars in general, rather than just a niche as it was of EVs. And I think searching for your source of significance as an agency is really important, just as it is for our clients.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Okay, so also now that we're talking about innovation and all of that a little bit now, what I want to ask you is, I know that Manifest is all about pushing boundaries and shaking up industries as well. So I wonder, how has that bold approach really helped you grow in revenue? I know we're not really talking too much about money, but it is something as agencies we need to speak about, right? So I want to know, how has it helped you grow in revenue, and what can other agency leaders also then take away from your playbook to balance taking risks and, making money?
I think it comes down to the fact that I said that revenue and profit are a result of work. So what's interesting is there's a cost mindset or almost a poverty mindset amongst lots of agencies rather than a mindset of abundance, right? That there's no such thing as a cost in any agency business. There's just an investment and a return. So if you see every project as an investment, it might not be the biggest revenue project, but what is the return you're looking to get from it? Always be very clear on the return. Everyone has the kind of projects that are never going to be the groundbreaking work that you're trying to do. There's certainly a level that we would say no from a creative opportunity, but there are some that are bigger creative opportunities than others. Um, so sometimes, the advantage is more around the revenue is going to help us invest in a lot of those programs we just talked about learning, for instance, or it's going to give us an opportunity to expand into new horizons that we've not been in before. Um, Even though the creative opportunity is not there, or then there might be the creative opportunity that's not bringing the revenue, but seeing that as a way that's going to win the awards that will keep the phone ringing to drive revenues. Always being strategic and having those three kind of stages as well. What's our objective with this project and piece of work? Then what's the strategy to achieving that? And then tactics in that particular order. I think sometimes we just go, okay, that client is worth a lot of money, let's do it. But actually, we've not considered that that might undermine our integrity as a business, which might actually then affect future revenue opportunities. So I think it is about seeing the whole board. There's a great episode. I mean, I'm showing my age now. A great episode of West Wing, where President Bartlett is playing chess with Sam Seaborn, and the whole thing is about look at the whole board. You can't just make one move at a time. And I think growth comes from that mindset, looking at the whole board, seeing and understanding that if this project is losing money, if you chose it to make money, then get rid of it. If you chose it to do something else, maximize the value, commercial value, if you like, of what it is you're getting from it. And the knock-on effect will be, growth effectively. And every market is slightly different in terms of how you bring revenue, but really reputationally, it has to be incremental too. Not trying to shoot for the moon right away. I mean, in the UK, for instance, when we started out, one of our earliest clients was Brewdog, the craft brewer, and we worked with them for 10, 11 years. We don't work with them anymore. We stopped working with them about 4 or 5 years ago. Some might say when the wheels came off the brand a little bit, but I wouldn't say that. But I think with those guys, we really forged new territory for what craft beer brands could do. It was probably a year before other breweries were knocking on our door. It was probably 2 years before we got a brief from PlayStation asking to do a Brewdog. It was probably a year after that that we were approached by the major drinks houses, and with a portfolio of brands they wanted us to work on. So Brewdog paid us very little at the outset, probably paid us very little for what we were doing at the end, but we knew that the value really was that we were doing work that we could be proud of. We were doing work that broke new ground and work that attracted new business. And I think that kind of growth mindset is hard sometimes when you're looking down the barrel of a pipeline that sucks, right? And just going, okay, well, it's all very well. And I think, we've certainly come unstuck sometimes and gone, look, we'll just take this project on for the cash, and then we'll try and make it something that's valuable to us. But in the end, it doesn't work on any front. Growth only comes from holistic growth. So we work across 4 different areas of growth now. So we have literally a 4-section bottom line. So we have performance, which is usual metrics of revenue, profit, margin. We have people, which includes utilization. It includes our EMPS score. It includes our ethnicity and gender pay gaps. We have product, which is our quality of work. We've developed our own way of judging the quality of work according to whether we're building brands, changing things, and being human-centric. And that's called the Ruckus Index because we're big Wu-Tang Clan fans. So we use that to judge the performance of the product, and also how many of our projects are multi-channel versus single channel, where we don't get as much influence, and the mixture of project and subscription work. And then we also have purpose, which is how much is this allowing us to do what we're trying to do? Is this developing our team? Is this, as I mentioned before, improving our pay gap? And those kind of four quadrants, those metrics are all regarded as profit. So we can't make a decision for one thing that detrimentally impacts the others, right? Everything has to be holistically considered. Um, and I think that's where growth comes from. If you just focus too much on performance, then you're looking at your business as a spreadsheet, and you end up trying to make the numbers write the story, and it doesn't quite work. And in the end, also, you lose track of creating a unique product that no one else can sell, or building a team that isn't going to cost you money by churning over, and your investment in the development doesn't pay off. So it's kind of joining all of those dots together is really where the revenue growth comes from my point of view.
No, absolutely. Do you know what what I took away from this, the biggest thing that you just said is basically looking at the bigger picture of when you are taking on clients, right? And you never know if you're, again, kind of circling back to doing as much work as you possibly can, and really, really good work, and putting all your effort in, such as what you guys did for Brewdog. Eventually, once you've done that, that gains a recognition from other big brands, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think that's the biggest takeaway, is sometimes you take on clients that might not have a lot to offer, maybe in terms of paying you in the beginning, but if you do the hard work at the end of it and you get recognized for that, and you help them grow really, or scale really big, other big brands are going to recognize that, and they're going to be knocking on your door. So again, it's just looking at that big picture and looking towards the future. I think a lot of agency owners are really looking at the now and trying to make a quick buck now, and not trying to really have that future driven mindsets, if I can put it that way, not to sound too buzzwordy, I suppose, but you know what I mean. So that's a very, very good takeaway, I would say, from what you just said. Now, okay, just circling also to you having worked with major brands like Apple and Sony PlayStation, I wonder, apart from this, that you guys just put in as much work as you possibly can, and as much good work, sorry, let me just repeat that. I wonder, what is your secret to landing and keeping these high profile clients on your roster? Are there ways that smaller agencies can follow your lead to get those big names as well? Are there any ways that you pitch, or any other advice that you have in that regard? Or is it really just all about recognition for the work that you've done previously?
Yeah, I mean, there's a mixture, right? You can only control what you can control. So there's a bias, for instance, in big brands, certainly, of smaller agencies potentially being a less safe pair of hands, for instance, which is complete nonsense, right? So often, how many people do you have in your studio is a question, despite the fact there's only 5 people required to deliver the work. So understanding the biases that exist on the side of the client, and just trying to be able to be compassionate to where they come from, and just trying to build a story that connects. I think one of the most important things that we have at Manifest is an ambition to not just understand the business objectives of your client, but understand, or actually to share the responsibility for achieving them, right? Or the passion to achieve them, at least. And I think, people talk a lot about passion in work. I talk about fun. And I think actually that's also interesting, that if people can see you're having fun discussing their brand, working on their brand, delivering work for their brand, it's infectious. Something that agencies often forget, because not everyone is asked to come up with ideas for a living, right? Quite frequently, the most exciting meeting of the month that your client has is with you, right? So make that something that is a responsibility. Stop talking about presentations, start talking instead about performances. Stop talking about feedback and instead talk about collaboration. Genuinely open up your heart as well as head to clients, and bring down the fences of what your brief is. Especially in the big brands, we see what people are looking for is problem solving, and briefs are really important. Clients can write good briefs or poor briefs, and everyone interrogates a brief, don't get me wrong. But one of the big rules, I think, for growth is forget the fucking brief, right? Like, if people knew what they wanted and how they wanted delivering it, they wouldn't be asking you to come and do it for them, right? The truth is that you don't know either. You can't come swinging in saying, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. The truth is, it's a collaboration. It's a meeting of minds, but importantly, a meeting of souls too. Like what we're trying to do is build brands that change the world. Most brands want to do work that changes the world, right? Most people want to be reminded how they get out of bed in the morning. And the superpower of an agency is looking from the outside in. It's really hard actually for me to talk about manifest because I know so many variables, right? That it's really hard for me to provide an answer. You ask me about a client, I can give you that one sentence that's going to make you go, wow. And that's what on the client side, they can't really understand why they haven't been able to do it. It's because you're in the coalface, you're in the work. There's a lot of things you see at an agency side that are amazing that you think is day-to-day work. There's a lot of things you think are amazing that an agency can tell you actually no one cares about. And that kind of collision of perspectives is what agencies need to lean into and consult. And those bigger brands, those big brand houses, yes, they need something to catch their attention. It should be work for other brands. It could be work you're doing yourself. It's certainly not you building your personal brand on LinkedIn. It is about legitimate passion for the industry and what affects and influences them.
100%. I think it's so interesting that you just mentioned it's not about building your personal brand on LinkedIn, because I feel like that is kind of where everybody's at right now. And I do agree. I think that there are certain aspects where you do have to have sort of a personality on LinkedIn. I know that it does grow, your client list and all of that stuff because people see, I know that people just post whatever the hell they want to on LinkedIn and that'll get you clients, whether you're being super professional or being really humorous. There is a advantage of doing something like that. But at the end of the day, my opinion is that you could be the most wonderful, followable person on LinkedIn, but if you're not doing good work with what it is that you're selling to people, whether it be a product or a service, at the end of the day, that's going to get you nowhere. You might just have millions of followers, but nothing to really back that up with, right? So yeah, I really like what you just said there as well.
It comes back to integrity, right? There are people who use LinkedIn who build an incredible personal profile. And then there are people who use LinkedIn to build an incredible personal profile. And the latter is kind of vacuous, right? It's shallow. LinkedIn is a channel you can use to express yourself. It's not a channel you can use to advance yourself, right? Not authentically. The former is where that authenticity comes from, that credibility, that influence, if you like. If you think that the channel is the way to do things, the channel alone is the idea, it's not going to happen for you. I see a lot of people just posting, the same stuff everyone else posts, or evident like clickbait, and you just think you're ruining this for the people who are on here to learn something and grow their network. But also you can understand why they're doing it. They think that if the more people who like their things on LinkedIn, the more briefs they'll get. And I'm sure there is some form of correlation, but surely do that by sharing something you care about or that matters, to the wider community and not just yourself.
Exactly. Not just the what my divorce taught me about B2B SaaS, right? Like that kind of stuff.
Although I would read that. So
yeah, I would read that too, but more ironically, I think, to be honest. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that a lot of it is clickbait. But I think, okay, going from like the personal branding sort of thing, like say for instance you or me adding stuff on LinkedIn for ourselves, I do think there is a big value for agencies and businesses to be adding that kind of stuff and creating sort of like a persona on LinkedIn for their business, right? I think that there is definitely value there, and I think there's quite a gap as well. I feel like, yes, we're seeing sort of the age of influencers on LinkedIn right now, which is what it is, because I think a lot of influencers came from, say, Instagram or Twitter, and they were like, wow, there's a massive gap on LinkedIn to do this. I actually know this for a fact because I've interviewed some of them, and they just completely infiltrated there. But I do think that there is some benefit for a business to have there as well, right? So, I mean, for sure, you can get something there, yeah. Okay, so just moving on a little bit. I know that from what we've also talked about, I know that you've led tons of brand strategies across many industries now. I wonder what consumer behavior shifts should agencies really keep on their radar, and how can they use those insights to help their clients grow as well?
That's really interesting. I think because we're in different territories, you kind of get a glimpse of what the human instincts are that don't change. But then it can sometimes be market specific around what is changing. For instance, the UK and the US are quite far apart, really, culturally at the moment. But also, Scandinavia and its view on everything from sustainability to, well, I guess that kind of whole field of conscious consumption to their adoption of technology is very different to the rest of Europe. So I think one thing I've noticed from a generational standpoint, actually, no, probably not. It's probably more a psychographic standpoint. I think the world is even more fractured than ever before, right? So there's this pressure of the macro geopolitical situation that everyone kind of has to deal with or ignore. And what we've noticed from a behavior standpoint, for instance, did you see that manifests itself in, for instance, people curating their own news feeds, even going completely blackout on news? Um, but traditionally, obviously, you had to read what was in the newspaper. The news was curated for you. Now it's the other way around. So yes, you used to buy a newspaper that kind of agreed with your opinion, right? That was the way that you purchased your brand. But now you only see stuff that you agree with. You only see stuff that you feel comfortable with. And I think increasingly people are using those controls more and more to kind of curate their own experiences. And I think that's an interesting challenge and opportunity for from a brand standpoint. But I think looking again at why that is, to be compassionate, I think it's about control. People just feeling the only thing I can control is me, and my experience, and I need to look after me. And I think sometimes Gen Z is seen as quite selfish, this attitude of, put your own gas mask on first. But I don't think that's the case. I think that it's the same pressure everyone else is feeling, but without the same necessary obligation to deal with it in the same way. And I think what we're seeing is an opportunity to curate yourself as something and someone that can be happy and whole in a world that is not. And I think brands have a responsibility to try and support that. And the brands that will succeed are the ones that seem connected um, to my personal daily life, that allow me to connect to a broader community, that feel naturally creative in an idiosyncratic way, that aren't doing something that everyone else could do, and also focus on a specific craft, I think. So like looking at the evolution of a big brand like Nike, for instance, I know they're moving back to brand after going to performance marketing. I think lots of big brands that have thought we can just go into that performance marketing circle, Airbnb the same, have moved back to that brand building because they realize that there's a big difference to one person buying a product 10 times or buying 10 different products to 10 people buying one product once, right? And although the economics looks the same, the advocacy and the value of that's driven by brand building is totally different. And I think we're going to see a renaissance in brand building from an area of marketing, certainly in the digital field, that's felt very fractured and very focused on immediate, like we said before, short-term returns, being understanding much more that this is about personalization, this is about connection to human lives, and understanding, from a manifest standpoint, we'd say what's the positive impact we have on the lives of the audience, that we can then turn our marketing not just into communicating that, but actually extending it, improving it. Like we worked with Tommy Tippy, the parenting brand, on a global campaign called The Boob Life a couple of years ago, and it was a campaign designed to kind of help undo the pressures of social stigma around breastfeeding for mums, whilst also promoting a new breast pump brand for Tommy Tippy. So we produced a film that basically just represented real mums of every spectrum. And we didn't stick it to stigma. We just showed what a world without stigma looks like. But then we threw that brand film, that TVC as well, it turned into the melting pot of social media, where we knew that the systemic stigma existed, right? So that it was banned on Facebook, it was banned on LinkedIn, it was banned on WhatsApp even. So Meta were the first ones, I think, then LinkedIn, they changed their algorithms because hundreds of thousands of mums from all over the world were sharing this film, saying this is the first thing we've seen for us, right? And I think that is great work. But I mean, don't get me wrong, we also sold out breast pumps, right? So it was very much about saying the positive impact of this breast pump is for you to feel like your feeding experience that is unique to you is as relevant and as rewarded and as solidarity building with your other mums as everyone else is. Um, and all of those mums, each of them who got themselves involved in that campaign, changed those algorithms in big tech to allow every mum to see a real representation of the feeding journey, right? And that campaign didn't do that. The mums did that, right? They owned the campaign, but that campaign didn't communicate what Tommy Tippy wants to do. It gave everyone a chance to join the campaign to do it, right? And there's a difference between campaigns you see and campaigns you join. And I think brands, if they want to connect to this new psychographic, which isn't just Gen Z, it's across the board, you need to find a way to build campaigns people can join.
Exactly. Yeah. Sort of like creating a camaraderie between people, right?
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, you are communicating your products and you are communicating your brand. But the brand is the product at the end of the day now. And people buy the products to subscribe to that. If you don't have a brand strategy, you've only got a transaction, which yes is a biddable price, but you're going to have to bid more and more for it. And that's what I said before at the outset. Those surviving brands are the ones that think all they need to do is just keep that performance marketing flywheel moving, and that's not enough. And the briefs that come to us now all ask for cultural relevance, and that could have been replaced a few years ago by purpose. Each of these it's cyclical, the language, but what they mean is they want to feel important in people's lives because it makes sense commercially, but it also makes sense internal brand wise. Brand strategy is business strategy at the end of the day. And I said marketing then, from our point of view, we're extending what a brand is capable of doing. We're not just communicating it. And I think that's really interesting. When we worked with Samsung on launching collabs, which was they were launching a experience center in King's Cross in London, and we created a campaign called the Collabs, where we took influencers from different ends of the social spectrum. Just like in King's Cross, it's a big kind of melting pot. Anyone who's not been to London, it's one of the big stations, and it kind of collects everyone from all the different parts of the UK. So we had, for instance, a grime artist and political activist, Akala, who we paired with Jazzy, who was a deaf cosmetics influencer, because there's a deaf school in King's Cross. We threw them together with Samsung Tech, and that was their collab, and we gave them some of the challenges that deaf children had told us was a social challenge. They felt disconnected from wider society. Now together, Akala and Jazzy with Samsung Tech built the first music track designed for deaf people to hear, right? And then we showcased it for the first time at Samsung KX environment, and there was a huge crowd there, and you have no idea how noisy deaf people can be. When they saw and they heard, and we used Samsung Tech to augment also how they felt the music, it was incredible. There's a moment that still gives me tingles down my spine when I watch it on the brand film as well, where Jazzy's in the studio and she kind of holds never been in a music studio before, she kind of holds the headphone and she kind of moves one of the levers. I've probably got the wrong word for that. One of the dials, and she can feel it, and she just puts her thumbs up. And then Akala's writing these lyrics about her sense of being deaf, and it's just unbelievable. And we also changed how we captioned music tracks to include tonality, which obviously deaf people can then feel a lot more, but isn't necessarily relevant for anyone who's not deaf. And it was wonderful, but it was a real solution to a real problem. But it also got all the people they needed to show up to this. We did 32 of those events. So we created 6-second video CVs for refugees that can't speak English. We created new rules for engaging with LGBTQ plus communities in sport, with sports psychologists and gay rugby players. It was unbelievable. like what we achieved just by throwing people together. But the brief just said we need some influencers to get people to show up to King's Cross. Like, but that's if you're building a brand and you're building a campaign that tackles a real challenge that changes the world, quite literally. If that's your ambition, that can be putting a smile on one person's face one day a year that wouldn't be there otherwise. It doesn't need to be huge and altruistic. That change, understanding that what I would call a virtue metric that sits under the value metrics, that sits under the vanity metrics, is kind of the initial splash before you get those ripples. That's something I think that brands need to do more of. Not just because it feels better, but because it performs better.
100%. I mean, I think it's a balance of both. And do you know what I take away the most from this conversation that we've had thus far today? Is agency owners need to be so passionate about what they do. And I mean, genuinely passionate. I think you get a lot of fake people out there or fake agency owners that are like, oh, yeah, we want to do good, this, that, and the next thing. But actually, yes, it is about getting paid. Obviously, we don't work for for the sake of just working. We obviously work for money. But I think what sets those people apart from truly amazing leaders of agencies are their deep rooted passion and understanding for how society works, empathy, that kind of stuff. And that's just the most incredible thing, honestly. Um, I do want to flip the script a little bit quickly, Alex. I want to know from you, what are the top 3 questions that executives or brands should really ask when they are picking a creative agency to work with them to ensure long term growth and to also really make sure that they're the right fit for them?
I think that's really difficult because I think one of the questions is, are these people the right fit for us? Um, I think sometimes uh, client side, at brand side, people look at the agency meeting the brief, but they don't necessarily look at the agency who is meeting the brief and how. And I think a pitch process, for instance, is such a small snapshot in a non-collaborative environment. I think you need to ask the question, how would we work together? I think asking about agencies' company values and how they're borne out in the work they've just presented. Like, again, seeking that idea of integrity, but also, is there a fit there with our company values too? And also, what are your long-term plans for the agency? What's the long-term vision for the agency? Um, does the philosophy bear out, right? What is it you're trying to achieve with your work? Because if that aligns with the kind of work we're looking for, then naturally, at least the ambition to achieve that is there. And I think a lot of the questions that we do get asked are the right ones too. We get asked who's going to be on the team. Meeting the more junior team is really important as well. We get asked sometimes also about everything from our carbon footprint to the ethnicity mix of our team, and I really love those questions. Yes, you should give a shit about that stuff. Yes, you should care. And yes, if this is an extension of your team, even more so. So yeah, I would ask that. I'd also ask for references from your existing clients. Sometimes we've lost work and it's been frustrating because the feedback has been an assumption. So it's not been something that it's been based off a pure instinctive reaction to something that, yes, we possibly could have controlled more, but if they just asked any of our clients, that fear would be allayed. And also sometimes don't look for a safe pair of hands or be scared by the work. Like, sometimes people consider brave work. In our industry, I think agencies often talk about brave work. There's no such thing as brave work. Like, not in marketing. We're selling stuff, right? There are people in this world who are brave. There are people in war zones. There are people down mines. There are people walking into fires. That's where the bravery hangs out. But really what you mean is what you're doing by doing that is saying that doing what you do now is safe. And I think what you need to walk into as a brand is go, if you're asking for change, understand that's going to mean change, and that might feel like quite frictionful when that happens, right? It might feel dangerous and new. Artists call it the shock of the new, and that is intentional. We have a line in our creative manifesto at Manifest which says, a good idea sends a shiver down your spine, but a great idea scares the shit out of you. Get used to it. And I think that fear, lean into it. Don't shy away from it. And yes, you can always make an idea feel safer. And trust me, usually that's just by living with it for a while. But no one ever did work that is famous by doing what everyone else did, just a bit better. You know, you've got to do something no one else has done before, and that's going to be hard to buy. You know, that's going to have to be bought from an agency you trust, and it's going to have to be an agency you feel will live or die by its success. So ask the questions that are going to get you there.
Okay, very, very cool. Thank you so much, Alex. That's really all I have for you today, but I think we covered everything, honestly. I mean, that you even just naturally sort of answered some of my questions that I had for you. So I'm really, really appreciative of your time. And yeah, thank you so much for this. Really.
No worries. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Curious about what top brands look for when choosing an agency? Tune into our latest episodes where we reveal the decision-making secrets of leading brands. Subscribe to the DesignRush podcast and stay ahead of the competition.